Aloha, welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. We're back. Had a lovely holiday up in the Pacific Northwest, just cruising around, visiting my brother, seeing where he's at, and then doing a little bit of hiking in the Cascades with some old friends from Germany. Very nice time, saw some beautiful sights, and have kind of a cleansed palate for appreciating Hawaii again, now coming back. But just want to keep this one quick and jump into something that I was, paying attention to today at a gig. First gig back, playing some steel guitar with Sweet Connie Lehua, with Keoki Kahomoku, Stan Mele Mai, and then Larry Miller, along with our friend Jeff Quinn, who plays the fiddle. And that quick thought is that when you're playing music with people, it's always a dance. And you can't be attached to anything that you're playing from a number of different angles. Like your part might be your part, but sometimes you have to play your part differently to kind of make it fit and to make it work and to make the dance happen. If you can't just be holding your ground the entire time, because that's going to sometimes take up too much space. If the song is going off the rails and nobody knows what's happening, if you can play strongly because you know what's going on, that's a great way to hold your space and to keep things on track, to give everybody else kind of a waypoint for what's happening in the music. But if that's not necessary and everybody is holding that space and that place, then there are times when you're going to want to back off and dance around that confident place. And what I'm mostly talking about here is dynamics, because with the setup of Sweet Connie Lehua, it's all different instruments. Nobody is repeating kind of the instrument sounds. So there's not two ukuleles most of the time. And so there's not that repeated timbre that's fighting to kind of wad itself all into one sonic range. So you don't have to think about parts so much in that situation, but you do have to think about dynamics and density, how much you're playing in one moment. And so what's interesting to think about is like the role of each instrument. And I know I've covered this a little bit before in the past, but it's something to bring up every once in a while and reiterate because it's really important. So with the steel guitar, just mechanically, you can't really strum it. So it's not really a rhythm instrument. You can do like dot, 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 like double stops where you kind of emphasize a rhythm just with an interval. But you don't strum chords. That's just not what the instrument is designed for. It's not how it is naturally played. So I'm not in charge of the rhythm. Like, obviously, I need to play in time so that what I play doesn't clash with everything else. But beyond that, there's only so much I can do to drive the song forwards. That's the job of Larry on the upright bass and Uncle Keoki on the slack key guitar and Uncle Stan on the ukulele. And then same with Jeff on the fiddle. The fiddle and the steel guitar are very similar role-wise instruments. So with the steel guitar, I don't really have a rhythm part to hold down. What I'm trying to do instead is to connect the dots between what's happening. So if there's like a vocal line and then there's a break in the vocal, you go to the next line, take a breath as the singer. A lot of times what the steel guitar will do is it'll play a little line in between there to create another texture in that space. So when I'm playing steel guitar, it's actually really fun because there are a lot of moments when I'm not playing. My hands are just resting on the instrument. And I know that the best thing I can do is nothing. Because if I try and do more, I'm playing with the signature lead line style of the steel guitar. I'm playing that right on top of where the vocal is going to be. So what I'm trying to do is always be mindful of where the vocal's at and how to stay away from that zone, to stay away from that area. Because one, it's super annoying to sing and to have somebody playing on top of you. Bottom line, it just don't do that. The singer is always going to be annoyed with anybody who's playing on top of what they're doing, because vocal sits at the top of the stack. Vocal is top of the food chain with music. That's just where it lives, and that's the way it is. And you got to just accept that. And as an accompanist or as a rhythm player, whatever your role is with your instrument, you need to always respect that. So you get out of the way when the vocal's happening, and then you play your little thing in between. It's just like if you listen to B.B. King. B.B. King never played while he sang. He sang a little something, and then he'd play a little something, and then he'd sing a little bit more, play a little bit more. And it was never happening at the same time. Like, that's a thing, and there's a place for that, but that's a beautiful example of like that call and response that is can be done and can be utilized to make the music work and to connect those dots and connect those pieces together. So when it comes to the dynamics of these different parts, if the ukulele is blaring loud, super loud rhythm, it takes up so much space. And that the best thing for every instrument to do is to breathe, is you change the volume. You don't play the same volume all the time. If the ukulele is always strumming super duper loud, then there's never a moment for the vocals to float out on top of that or the steel guitar to float out on top of that. But there are moments like when the ukulele rhythm can also be used as a transition thing, where you play a little louder for a couple of strums, and maybe that works in conjunction with where the steel guitar is playing a little lead line. But it pumps the music in that moment to give it a little bit of interest and to continue sending it forward and to make it breathe, make it dynamic, make it interesting. If you're always playing everything at the same exact volume, you're not doing that unless, you have 9 other people in the band who are mindful of that and are able to convey that dynamic beyond your part, kind of. Then it's just something you have to really be mindful of. And I think the less instruments there are, the more you can do with dynamics, because you have less arrangement options. The fewer instruments there are, like if you only have an ukulele and a guitar, you can't have a big drum solo because that instrument doesn't exist. So you have to figure out other ways to be clever to create interest in the music. In a larger band context, you're not going to be able to move as much. Like the most dramatic thing you can do is you can stop playing and you let the rest of the instruments go on. And sometimes that's the most appropriate thing to do, depending on the style of music, depending on what instrument you're playing. If you're playing ukulele and you're strumming along and you're playing with a guitar player and a bass player and a drummer, maybe the cool thing to do is for the guitar and the ukulele to completely stop playing and it's just the drums and the bass. Like, that's a traditional musical arrangement hook. Drums and bass. And then, they play a thing and they groove, and that's a certain sound. And then when the rhythm instruments come back in, it's that much more impactful, that much more powerful. But I think the main thing that I want to emphasize for this podcast is stay off the singer, always. Like, there's moments where maybe there will be a lead line that is like complementary to the vocal, and it will be a thing, like an arranged thing. But anytime you're just diddling on top of the vocal or playing your rhythm like extra super duper loud, you are probably overstepping your bounds. And it's always a good reality check to listen. And this is the kind of thing that it's hard to notice if you're playing in the moment. If you're playing that, you might not notice it, but when someone else does it, it's super annoying. So it just goes back to that self-reflection of learning to be mindful of the music that you are playing so that you can, in that moment when it's your turn to have that role, you can avoid the things that are annoying when someone else does it, right? It's just being aware, self-aware of these things, and then also trying to practice them as much as possible. Like if your role is kind of like filling some spaces and diddling a little bit, you need to practice getting off the bus when the vocal comes back in. You get out of the way, or you hold your last note so that it rings long, and then the vocal comes in on top of that note, and then you're done. And then you go back to whatever you're doing, or you play whatever part at a quieter volume because the vocal is the featured piece in that moment. And, again, when you get to the end of the vocal line, you can push the gas pedal again and you get back into your riff or your solo or your noodling or whatever you're doing in that moment to fill the space. But as soon as your noodle takes away from the intelligibility of what the lyric is trying to say, then you're blowing it. So just be mindful. If you're a lead player, there's a lot of fun and interest in learning how to noodle, learning how to solo, and kind of like compose on the fly and create things. But just be aware that, with great power comes great responsibility, that kind of a thing. You just have to be mindful of that. And if you don't ever play with a vocalist, maybe the thing to be aware of is, because usually there'll be a melody to a song. Rarely is it just like, a soundscape or something, though that is a style of music. But especially for the genres that ukulele is used for, a lot of times you will have a dedicated melody, and maybe that's played by another ukulele player. If you are diddling on top of that as well, it makes it hard. The intelligibility of that melody is lost as well, regardless of whether it's a sung lyric or a picked melody on a different ukulele. So it's always give and take, and it always is really helpful to be self-aware. And if you're not able to, notice what somebody else is doing that might be annoying, you can always fall back on recording yourself. Pop up a voice memo on your phone, set it there, play through the song, play your stuff, and just notice how your instrument sits in relation to the rest of the music. And there's rarely right or wrong. So I hate to say it's absolutely wrong. You never, ever, that's not what I'm here to say, but just to be mindful. And that in most cases you want, as a musical offering, you want the lyric to be the most prominent thing. That is the move. So take that as you will. I'm just going to keep it short here. It's a little bit of a busy day, and we will continue on in the future with the Live Ukulele podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and check out liveukulele.com/store and see if you want to jump in. I'm working on updating some of the lessons in left-hand technique, adding to those so there's a little bit more content about how the right hand works to complement all of the left-hand intricacies of the course. Jumping in and talking about some picking styles that are also, going to be used in conjunction with the left-hand stuff. So there's a little bit more meat there as far as that goes. If you're already a left-hand technique member, check that out. I need to get my lenses cleaned. Hawaii is very humid, and I think I left the lenses in a dark box with too much humidity for too long because they started growing fungus, and now I need to get them cleaned. But once that's done, we'll get back on the train, make some videos for left-hand technique, and keep the learning going as much as possible. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Brad Bordessa. The Live Ukulele podcast is published on the first and third Saturdays of every month. I hope you enjoyed the Uncle George episode. I was told by somebody that was the best one yet. Really a treat to hear Uncle George's stories. So go back and check that one out if you haven't heard it already, and be sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next episode. Ahui ho.